Where have you been? Why are you here? And where are you going? If you want to make it happen, it's you. It's not over till I win. Not over till I get through. You've got to have that kind of courage, that type of determination. And you look at it and embrace whatever comes to you. Don't run from it. Step toward it. Don't try and duck it like most people do. See, most people want it easy. Easy come, easy what? Easy go. How do you hang in there during the hard, difficult times? You must have faith. You've got to believe in yourself. You've got to believe in your abilities, unquestionably. And many times when those things happen, you want to give up. Everything in you is telling you to stop. Every muscle is aching. And it's going to be hard. Easy is not an option. But if it's hard, we will do it hard. Whatever is required to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat.
What is up, YouTube? Live via satellite here, and today we are talking Kingdom, manga chapter 568. And guys, this week was the worst week for Kingdom. And the funny thing is, a majority of you probably don't even know what happened. But I'm here to let you guys know what happened. Because what happened was so bad that I actually considered just quitting doing Kingdom reviews. Because it was that terrifying. But of course, I only have myself to blame for this one. Because I was the one who was being impatient. So you guys know, we were just coming off of a 2-week break. And you know how it gets, guys. That itch. You get that Kingdom itch. So what do? I take a little trip over to Reddit and I see that the Kingdom spoilers are out. But unfortunately at the time there's no pictures, we just have like a rough summary. So me just having to know what's gonna happen next, I proceed to read this summary. And it's horrifying. It literally had me thinking it had to be fake. I literally dismissed it. Especially when I saw these lines right here. Yotanwa is encircled by the Kwangrang. Yotanwa's group hits and runs to a forest, but Kwangrang is too crowded and they kill Yotanwa's group. Only Yotanwa is alive. Yotanwa is alone, exhausted, willing to give up, prepared for death. Suddenly, Bajio appears. Just that right there was too much. I couldn't believe it. And the guy who posted it, Atheist Somali Pirate, nothing against him because he was just, reposting it from another site. But it was just too shocking. It was just too much for me to believe. So I just, like I said, I had to dismiss it. But then the Korean version came out. And if you just scroll through the pictures and look at the pictures without actually understanding the words, it looks like everything that was said in the summary was absolutely true. And I was pissed. I'm not gonna lie. I was just done. I could just see it. I could see it. Like after all the work we've done to try to build up Yotanwa, now the Yotanwa haters have something to hold on to. But lo and behold, after reading the actual chapter, what I thought was going to be like a negative 5 out of 10 chapter wound up being like a 9 or a 9.5 out of 10 type of chapter. So the moral of the story here, guys, is don't do drugs and don't read spoilers. But if you are going to read the spoilers, then just take them with a grain of salt. Because until you actually read it in your language, you have no idea what they're actually saying.
বান্ধবী সে কিন্তু অনেক সুন্দর হাসিটা অনেক সুন্দর হ্যাঁ যেতে পারি নাকি ওটা আমি নিয়ে যাই একদিনের জন্য আবার দিয়ে যাবো সমস্যা নেই আমি কালকে আবার দিয়ে যাবো হ্যাঁ অনেক সুন্দর একটু খেলতাম আর কি ওনার সাথে না প্লিজ
Alright, so the chapter actually starts off picking up right where we left off in the last chapter. And the first thing I noticed right away in this initial charge and this initial battle is that we see all of Yotanwa's main units from Taijefu to Shunmin and Bajio. And the title of this chapter, The Strongest Warrior, actually comes into play right away as we see that even though everyone else is struggling, Bajio is actually able to break through the Kwangrang forces, which actually was key in giving Yotanwa a path for escape. And what I really liked about this situation is that both Yotanwa and Bajio made the most out of this situation. Bajio didn't just stop at breaking through, he actually went a step further by going directly for the Zhao HQ to sow confusion amongst their men. And Yotanwa uses this opportunity to have one of her men pass a message on to all of the chieftains. And she's basically telling them to split up with their tribes and avoid the enemy until sunrise. And right away, again this chapter, we see that sunrise is being emphasized. But another important thing that Yotanwa alludes to is that they will all be regrouping at their rendezvous point, which is actually kept secret from the reader, so I can only imagine that once this location is revealed, it may be an eye-opening experience. Then we do a little bit of a time skip to the end of the battle, and we see that Rozo and Sensuiju are arriving on the scene, and them along with their men are actually in shock about how many bodies there are. And Rozo even questions like what happened here. And during my first read, I was actually confused as to why Sensuiju and Rozo seemed so puzzled here, because I was actually thinking like, weren't you guys there to see what just happened? But then I remembered two things. That one, Rozo and Sensuiju were still on their way to that location in the last chapter, so it's possible that this battle was actually so fast that it was over before they actually arrived. And two, that even if they were in the vicinity at the time, it's like pitch black, it's darkness, you know, it's not like it's a football game in a stadium where, you know, you have plenty of light to see what's going on, which is one of the reasons that they don't do battle at nighttime in the first place. But then we get Kosen Ryu showing up to explain exactly what happened, and we see that even though he had them cornered and planned not to underestimate them, evidently he still did, because his main excuse is that he couldn't imagine how much strength each and every one of Yotanwa's soldiers would still have left. And we see that even though they slew a majority of Yotanwa's army, they actually lost many of their men as well. But Kosen Ryu didn't have all bad news, because even though Yotanwa did escape, they were still able to actually keep track of her. But here's where we see the differences between the Zhao army and the Quangrong army are very evident, because we see that Sensuiju actually shows concern to what happened to Kosen Ryu's hand. And as he's telling a story about how Bajio made a business decision and decided that Kosen Ryu didn't need his hand anymore, we see Sensuiju tell him that he'll take over and for Kosen Ryu to go get some rest, which prompts Rozo to say how soft the Zhao military is, because on his end, he not only tells one of his men to go take the head of who was in charge of the Quangrong at the time, but also once everything's concluded, to kill his entire family. And finally, that the person delivering this message is now going to be in charge. And the funny thing is here, I don't know if this guy can even be happy about this promotion, because the way the Quangrong kill off their commanders, moving up the ladder probably feels more like a death sentence.
Oh, come on. Hey, look, you guys gotta think for yourselves. I'm not your father, all right?
Is that a weird thing for him to say to us?
General number one, do you want to be a follower or do you want to be a leader?
Leader?
How dare you?
He even goes on to tell Kosen Ryu how lucky he is that he isn't one of them, because if he were, he'd have his other eye taken out and then have him killed, which to me seems like a bit of overkill. But Sensuiju then gets things back on track as he tells Rozo that they need to hurry, because if Yotanwa and her men are able to escape Rozo's territory, then things could become troublesome. But Rozo assures Sensuiju that they won't be escaping because the area is surrounded, and even though they find out that they've escaped into the thick forest and have separated their men, Rozo makes Sensuiju aware that his special tracking unit, the Gon clan, are hunters that keep chasing no matter what, and that nothing can hide from their noses, which is pretty impressive. But I don't know, do you really want to smell everything?
I mean, these are big hits, but they've got to generate some offense, and this should help. Oh, here you go. Go with that. Wakey time.
Then on cue, we move over to the Gon clan, who we see have caught up with Yotanwa, and once they find her, they alert the rest of the Quangrong forces with their horns. And even though Yotanwa finds herself yet again surrounded, facing insurmountable odds, she believes that this is actually a good thing, because it will allow the rest of her army to be able to escape more easily. But unfortunately, even though Yotanwa seems to be holding her own, she winds up sustaining an injury as her horse falls on her leg, and we actually get the speech bubble that says it actually cracks. And as she's being helped up by some of her men, we again see her ask one of her men to relay a message to everyone who meets at the rallying point, and that is that she will see them again. And in the next scene, I found it pretty interesting that even though Yotanwa and her men are trying to make an escape, their pursuers are not letting up one bit, and in the process, as they're moving along, they are still sounding the horns, keeping track of Yotanwa's location. And as they finally corner her again, we see that she's down to her and her last man. But as the Kwangrang close in, realizing that it's just the two of them, Yotanwa lets us know that it's actually just her. Because Toji, a warrior who fought to protect her to the end, breathes no more. And the funny thing here is that even though this may look like just some random fodder character that Haru's killing off, he's actually a pretty old character in the manga. Toji has been holding it down for Yotanwa since chapter 41. So shout out to Toji. And as the Kwangrang soldiers are pretty much giving Yotanwa the resistance is futile treatment, saying that she should throw her weapons down and that King Rozo awaits, she lets them know that it isn't time for that yet. Because by them using their horns to alert everyone of her position, it was not only a benefit to them, it was actually also a benefit to her as well. Because that allowed for him to find his way to her. Bajio, the strongest warrior. And we see Bajio burst onto the scene with a blood-drenched mask, looking as if he has gone through hell to reach Yotanwa. And we see right away how true this was because Bajio's horse collapses and dies on the spot after being pushed to its limits. But I actually really enjoyed the interaction between both Yotanwa and Bajio right here at the beginning of this scene, because we see how Bajio apologizes to Yotanwa for keeping her waiting, but we also see how Yotanwa apologizes to Bajio for, asking so much of him. And again, as they begin to fight against the Kwangrang and Bajio realizes that Yotanwa can't continue on her leg, I really like how neither one of them had to say a word before Bajio realized exactly what needed to be done. And another interesting thing here is that even while Bajio was carrying Yotanwa and escaping into the woods because he knew that they wouldn't be able to follow them on horseback there, as Yotanwa tries to convince Bajio to let her down because she believes that she can still run on her own, Bajio doesn't hesitate to tell her no, because not only does he know that it would be faster if he just carries her, but this also shows me how well he knows Yotanwa and that she really cares for her people and she doesn't want to be a burden to Bajio. Which is actually reinforced in the next few panels as she sees that while carrying him, his arm is like gushing blood, which makes her want to apologize even more because once again it is him who has to bleed the most. But Bajio doesn't even mind because he believes that he already made a oath to do just that, which Yotanwa quickly corrects, saying, "No, you didn't, you fool." But just this whole interaction was funny to me. Bajio's just trying to make her feel better because nobody's that idiotic to put themselves in a position to bleed if they don't have to.
I've never seen this many raccoons. Look, the cat's going. Oh, crap. Crap.
But as they're escaping, the Kwangrang troops can't believe how fast Bajio is, even while carrying another person. But the biggest concern is not only losing them, but the fact that up ahead is Saha Canyon. And they really don't care if Bajio dies, but they can't allow Yotanwa to die, because that would not be something that Rozo would forgive. And as the Kwangrang are screaming out for Bajio to stop, we see them moving at full speed toward the cliff, and Yotanwa telling him that she trusts him. As the Kwangrang can't believe their eyes, as Bajio takes flight, leaving us to wonder whether or not they'll be able to survive this jump. And that was the chapter in a nutshell, guys. So to me, guys, that was a great chapter of Kingdom. There's a lot to talk about, but obviously the main thing that everybody's going to be wondering is, what is going to happen with Bajio and Yotanwa here? So to me, when I look at this situation, there seems to be like a few possibilities that could possibly happen here. The first possibility to me is that maybe he actually clears the jump. Because when you look at the panel, it actually looks like the cliff on the other side is a bit lower than the cliff that Bajio jumped off of. So I think that's one possibility, even though that may be the most unlikely. The next thing that could possibly happen is that maybe Bajio throws Yotanwa to the other side, sacrificing himself in the process, which would pretty much suck. But the third possibility is that we don't really see the bottom of this canyon, and maybe there's like a river down there or something like that where they could fall into and both survive. But I mean, Haru really knew what he was doing, because this cliffhanger is serious, because this is the first time in a while that I felt like Bajio's life was actually in danger. But moving on to another important part of this chapter, it seems like Yotanwa is pretty confident that if her people can make it to sunrise, then somehow the situation will be able to turn around. And it's especially intriguing when you consider the gathering point for her entire tribe. And even though this could wind up meaning nothing at all, it could actually wind up being something that has to do with Impo. And maybe the fact that all of Rozo and his men are outside of the city, this could be the perfect time for them to meet up and rendezvous back at that location. And I just think it would be cool to see Rozo and his men coming back to the city in the morning after a long night chasing Yotanwa all around, only to find that Yotanwa and her men have already captured the city. But we'll just have to wait and see what happens, because Howard has been doing a real good job at keeping us guessing, because I don't think there's not a single person who could have foreseen how this chapter would have went. Because after that cliffhanger last week with her surrounded, I just knew someone was going to come help save the day. But that didn't happen at all, and Yotanwa and her men were forced to deal with this situation on their own. So to me, even though I think most people may consider this like a loss for Yotanwa, I don't think we can judge this just yet, because we really don't know what her end game is here. I mean, to me, it seems obvious that she has some sort of plan. And even though she lost a lot of her men, so did the Zhao army. But the most important thing is that she was able to escape, and not only that, by drawing the attention of most of the Quangrong army, was actually able to help save a portion of her troops, when in all honesty, they should have been completely wiped out. If anything, you really got to give the L to the Zhao, because their whole objective was to trap and kill Yotanwa. You do that and the war is over. And considering all the resources they've used to try to capture this one woman and still not being able to get it done, so in my opinion, the reason it's an L is because they didn't achieve their main objective, especially having such a massive advantage like they did. But since I'm bringing up objectives, I can't leave Yotanwa and her army off the hook either, because they've still yet to slay Bunen. And I'm really curious to see if we're going to wind up going to the next day, or if we're going to stay in this night and we're going to actually see Kitari and Heki try and pursue Bunen. Even though I'm starting to think that that's something they'll probably wind up saving for the following days. And even though we left off on a cliffhanger, I wouldn't be surprised if we wound up switching back over to another battlefield, because we haven't had any updates on Shin and the other battlefields since the first half of chapter 561. And the last thing I wanted to talk about with this chapter was something that was kind of minor, but I actually think it showed something that we haven't seen in a while from Yotanwa, and it was actually her ability to sense the presence of Bajio before he even arrived. Way back in chapter 33, we saw that she had this ability when she was able to sense Shin's presence and that he was facing off against a strong opponent, even though he was in a totally different location. And in this chapter, as the Quangrong are pretty much telling her that this is over, we see her pause for a second and close her eyes, and then when she opens them again, says basically it's not time for that. So to me, clearly she was able to sense how close Bajio was. So yeah, it wasn't major, but it was just something I thought that was kind of interesting and a little detail that people may have overlooked. But moving on to the comment of the week, and this week's comment goes out to Ayman Kamikaze, and what he said was, man, I'm calling it right now, the Quangrong are gonna turn on the Zhao forces. Tanwa's goal is to reunite the realm of the mountains, all of it, not just the western part. And I really like this comment, especially after reading this chapter, because we've seen firsthand that Rozo is not a good king. The way he treats his men and the people who are working underneath him has been highlighted numerous times in this arc. And to me, it's only a matter of time before this all turns around to bite Rozo in the ass. So I don't think it's far-fetched for sometime soon Yotanwa to be having command of this Quangrong army. And even though Zhao at first thought this could be an advantage, it would be really kind of ironic to see the Zhao now have to face off against what they perceive to be their own trump card. But anyway guys, that about does it for this week's review. Let me know what you guys thought of the chapter in the comments section below. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and feel free to share, comment, and subscribe. Peace out!